Welcome in, I'm Artris, and in this video we're going to be going over Nico Robin, a new leader from OP09 that's in the colors of purple and yellow. She is a 4-life leader that says Banish. Yes, Banish, that is an intense word to have on a leader, and it says when attacking you may trash one card with trigger from your hand, add up to one Dawn card from your Dawn deck and set it as rested. Similar to Yamato, how they have double attack, this has a built-in keyword, which Banish arguably is even more powerful than double attack in my opinion. Probably one of the more powerful keywords to be printed on a leader. And on top of that, you have natural built-in ramp by discarding. Sure, that does suck that you have to discard a card to be able to ramp. However, being able to get to some of your bigger body turns a lot faster than you normally would pays off in the end. So there's a couple of different ways you can build this leader. But before we go over the deck list and how I've built it, if you find anything in this video useful or informative, please make sure to drop a like and a sub. It helps out the channel immensely. I cannot thank you enough for the support. Additionally, if you'd like to talk about the One Piece card game outside of the YouTube comments, please make sure to join the Discord. The link for that is in the description below. So starting off, because Nico Robin is in purple and yellow, we're going to take a bunch of purple and yellow good stuff. And so for that, one of the purple good stuff cards is the 9-cost Linlin from OP08. On play, Dawn -1, trash a card from your hand, and then add up to one card from the top of your deck to the top of your life. Then place up to one of your opponent's characters at the cost of 6 or less to the top or bottom of its owner's life face up. This card comes in clutch very often because when you are playing this 9-cost Linlin, the turn prior, your opponent will probably only be on 6 Dawn unless they are on a ramp deck themselves. And so anything that they throw down that turn will be answered by this Linlin. I've done my math correctly. And so that's very important because being able to answer the board is something that Nico Robin doesn't really do that well of. Usually the way that you're supposed to play Robin, in my opinion, is that you're supposed to use your leader swing to get a card out of the opponent's hand or just to banish a life. And then you use your bodies that you have on the board to be able to contest the board at that point. But you don't really have too many ways to KO opponent's characters other than maybe a couple that we'll get to in a second. So Linlin is a great way to bypass and have some kind of removal while establishing a pretty big body and healing at the same time. For the 6-cost spot, I have 4 of the promo Zoro. I really enjoy this card in this deck. Having Banish on your leader and then also having a character that has Banish is very threatening. If you are able to throw this down on your 6 Dawn turn, which should be your turn 3 if you're going first, this card will put in work because your opponent then has to answer or counter out of your leader swing and then counter out of this swing. Otherwise, they are just losing 2 cards from your life, and that feels really bad for the opponent. Of course, it wouldn't be a yellow deck without having beige in it. This is a purely 2K counter. Otherwise, the trigger is probably the most important thing out of here, is that it says up to one of your opponent's leaders or characters cannot attack during this turn. So if your opponent's trying to go for lethal, and this is one of the last lives that you have, it will save the game quite often. If you've played an L, you're familiar with this. If you played against any yellow deck, you're probably familiar with this card. It is quite the pain and hassle to deal with. Then we're running for Yamato, the 9-cost Yamato 9000 power. This is an alternative to play on 9 Dawn if you are at 1 life. The thing here is it says K up to one of your opponent's characters with a cost that is equal to or less than the total life of you and your opponent. Then if you have 1 life or less, you may add up to 1 card from the top of your deck to your life area. To be quite honest, when I'm playing this deck, I take a lot of life because I know that I have ways to heal back up, and I'd like to see more cards overall. And so I'm okay going down to 1 life, knowing that I have a Yamato usually ready to go on the turn that I go down to 1 life. That way I can heal back up, usually KO something that's on their side of the field, and establish a big body and feel pretty safe thereafter. Running 3 Gadatsu, this is a 5-cost 6,000 power body that just says on play, KO up to one of your opponent's characters with a cost of equal to or less than their life. So if you are, swinging at your opponent with your leader, they're countering out, and they have a high life total, they can get punished by this Gadatsu. Otherwise, to be quite honest, I don't like to play 5-cost characters because I do have 6-cost characters to play that I feel are more impactful to the game. However, Gadatsu is pretty nice to be able to answer some of those smaller bodies that you might not be able to get rid of by just swinging into. Then we have for Frankie, this is a 2K counter that says trigger, draw 1 card. Then if you have 1 or less life, play this card. It's a very important card to have into your deck because having a card that comes out of life that could potentially swing for lethal is very important. Additionally, it feeds into your leader ability. Being able to have a lot of counter cards to pitch, to be able to ramp up is important. And Frankie's probably one of the more pitchable ones. Of course, like 2Ks are probably ones you want to hold on to, of course, but sometimes all you have is 2Ks, and Frankie's probably one of the ones that that you can toss out and feel comfortable tossing out. So Frankie's at a 4 though, because you do like to see this be one of the last lives. And if it is in life and you want to be able to draw, you can use the draw 1 card. It doesn't always have to be played out into the field. You can just draw the card, and then, you know, if you're at 2 life, you don't get the body, but you get to draw the card and get to see further into the deck, which also is important at some points of the game. Then we have 4 of the 10 cost Rush Ace. Now, I'm not sure if I like this one at a 4 of in the deck. I do like the card overall in general, and that's why I've included it at a 4 of. However, we are running some counter events which require you to have Dawn up. You have to be very smart on which turns you can play this card and which turns you have to hold on to it. And so because of that, it can be a little bit of a nuisance, a pain point for this deck to be like, oh, can I play this ace this turn and survive the following turn? I don't know. Maybe I can, maybe I can't. So that's up to you to figure out depending on the game state, of course. But this is one of the more powerful cards in yellow, being able to on play add up to 1 card from the top of your deck to the top of your life, and then if you have 2 life cards or less, this character gains Rush. The couple things here, you can just heal if you want to and go past 2 and you don't have the Rush. You can also choose to not heal if you're at 2 and then have the Rush for this character. So a couple ways you can play that, just a couple things to point out for this character card. Then I'm running 4 of the Jewelry Bonnie, a 3 cost 4,000 power body. Now, sometimes you really don't have a lot to do on 3 Dawn. Most of the time when I'm playing Nico Robin, I'm swinging 8 and using my leader ability. However, there are times where you might want to throw down a Bonnie if you have it in hand, so that way you can gain some card advantage over the course of a game. Of course, this card says Dawn ×1, your turn once per turn. When your opponent loses a life, draw 2 cards and discard 1 card from your hand. So this applies to any kind of battle damage through life. It also applies to critting life, or like, I guess, whatever you would consider banishing life without attacking, which we'll get to in a second. So you do get to draw cards off of that as well. Otherwise, this can be a nice little, leader fodder to be able to ramp up and discard from your hand. The trigger is also nice, being able to draw 2 and discard 1. Prior to putting this card in, though, I was running, I believe it was the 3 cost blocker Saul, and I think that card is fine as well. However, it doesn't have a counter on it, and I think that was more of a problem for me than anything else. Even though it does get a free trigger out of life, and as a body, it can be played out of life, I think Bonnie is probably more impactful over the course of a game, in my opinion. Then I am running 4 of the Nami, the 5 cost 5,000 power body from OPO 8. It says on play you may trash 1 card with trigger from your hand, which we have a fair amount of trigger cards in hand, or I guess rather in the deck. And then KO up to one of your opponent's characters with a cost of 5 or less. Then if your hand has 3 or less cards in it, draw 1 card. Sometimes you might be low on hand size, and that second clause comes into play, but otherwise you're using this to clear bodies off the board, because as I mentioned earlier, you don't have a lot of removal in this deck, and so having things like Nami, having things like Adatsu, Yamato, Linlin, those cards can help get rid of the smaller bodies that might be more of a threat. And then once you hit to the late game, you're going to hit the late game quicker than your opponent will. Then, you have established a body or 2 by that point, and then you can probably close the gap and start pressuring to finish out the game at that point. So that being said, Nami's a great way to at least keep you in the game in the mid-game section. If they start developing too many bodies, it's a great trigger as well. It can also be pitched for your leader ability. Then we're running 4 Nico Olvia. This is a 2K counter from OPO 9 that says on play, give up to one of your leader Nico Robin power plus 3,000 for the turn. The phrasing on this is a little weird, but basically it's just saying, like, if you play this down, you get to give your leader 3,000 power. So there are times where you get the extra boost. So for 1 Dawn, you gain additional 2 Dawns worth of attack, and you can use this to kind of push harder for game at later stages, which is probably unexpected for a lot of people. Otherwise, it's a 2K counter, and the other thing that's really useful here is that the trigger is a great trigger to have. It is a Shirahoshi trigger, a graceful charity, if you will. If your leader is Nico Robin, draw 3 cards, then discard 2 cards. Sometimes it comes up, and then you can dig further into the deck and find pieces that you might need. So overall, this is one of the best 2K counters that you can put into this deck. And then another new addition from OPO 9, we are running the 6 cost 6,000 power Nico Robin on play. If your opponent has 3 or more life cards, trash up to one of the top cards of your opponent's life. Trigger is play up to 1 cost 3 or less yellow character from your hand. The trigger is usually not going to ever come up because there's nothing really I care to play out too much unless you want to get a free like Jewelry Bonnie out, which that could be nice. But the more important thing here is the on play, being able to trash a life if your opponent has 3 or more. When I was talking about Jewelry Bonnie, drawing 2 and discarding 1 if your opponent loses a life, this also counts because this is a trash. They're losing a life. Even if you didn't do battle damage, they are still losing that life. So Nico Robin is a really strong play to be made made on your turn 3. Your ideal curve is on, turn 1, you have 1 Dawn. This is if you're going first. On turn 2, you're going to be at 3 Dawn. You swing 8, use your leader ability, ramp up to 4. Then on your turn 3, you're at 6 Dawn, and you can play the Nico Robin to trash another life, or you can play this Zoro. So you have a couple of options to play on 6. It wouldn't be purple good stuff if we weren't running the new Gum Gum Giant from OP09. This card is absolutely busted, and Nico Robin takes advantage of it, being a Straw Hat Crew leader. And so it says Dawn -2, you may trash 1 card from your hand. This is a counter event, by the way, for only 1. If your leader has the Straw Hat Crew type, give up to one of your leader or characters plus 4,000 power for this battle, then draw 2 cards. So you go net neutral with this card, you play this out, you -2 Dawn, you trash a card from hand, so you've lost 2 cards, but then you gain 2 cards. So you're basically pitching the worst card from your hand to gain 2 mystery cards, which will probably be better than what you pitched. So Gum Gum Giant, to me, is one of the most broken cards to come out of OP09. Love to see it. Purple is very, very strong because of this card, and it wouldn't be, purple good stuff, yellow good stuff without Gum Gum Giant. Also, yellow good stuff being the 0-cost event. You're the one who should disappear. And it's very flavorful because we do have Nico Robin with the same hat. That hat is from Sky Island Arc, of course, or Skypiea. And that we can see this in this card that Nico Robin is also wearing that same hat. So it is from that same arc, which, very flavorful. We always love to have that on the channel. It's a 0-cost event that says counter, you may trash 1 card from your hand. Your leader or up to one of your characters gains plus 3,000 power for this battle. So basically, you're just pitching maybe a dead card if you are tapped out. Like if you play the ace down and you have a 0-cost event, you can at least feel comfortable knowing you have some counter in hand. There's not too many duds in the deck, so, you might not have the most use out of this, but it is nice to have because of the trigger. It says if you have 0 life cards, put the top card of your deck onto your life pile, then trash 1 card from your hand. So this can be an additional beige trigger in a sense because you're gaining a life back and you've stopped an additional attack. So having this is very, very useful, of course, because of the trigger. Otherwise, you can just pitch it for your leader ability because you don't have too many bricks in the deck. Like I said, you're running about, I think, 11 total, maybe more than that. You're running 15 total, it looks like, with the aces, the Yamatos, Linlins, and Giants. My math might be a little bit off here. I don't know. It's been a long day. So yeah, we have a fair amount of non-bricks though, which is very nice to have in a yellow deck. The deck overall feels very smooth. However, I will say that it does struggle against decks like Doflamingo because Doflamingo, of course, just swarms the board and you don't have a lot of ways to answer Doflamingo. You can kind of stall out just like a turn or two to be able to chain Yamatos, and usually that's the way you win that matchup. Of course, going against Blackbeard, the on-plays you have are pretty much pointless. You're not going to be able to play anything, so you're just going to be playing out vanilla bodies and try to stack the field as much as possible. Nico Robin, I think, is a lot better of a leader than people give it credit for. I think the fact that it has built-in banish makes it very interesting as far as the different ways you can build it. That being said, I would like to explore a full straw hat or close to full straw hat package if possible down the road. Of course, we have the 6-cost already in the way. You have the Nami, you have the 5-cost Egghead Luffy. There's different things you could do with the 9-cost Rush Luffy. That's something I'd like to explore as well. But for the sake of this video, I've really just enjoyed playing this version of the deck that I built, and let's take it in the sim and see how it does. All right, going against Black Purple Luffy, to be quite honest, I'm not sure how this matchup is supposed to go, but I do want to take first because I want to be able to ramp up a little bit faster or get that momentum going before Black Purple Luffy does. We're just going to swing 8 here, use our leader ability to pitch a 6-cost Nico Robin because we have another one to play, and we want to have options on 6 to either play the Nico Robin or to play the 6-cost Zoro. I think both are decent options here, just depends on what they play. Of course, they go Zoro, and they're going to use this Zoro to ramp up a whole boatload. So they're obviously going to ramp up a little bit faster than us, but that's not a problem because we do have some hopefully big bodies we can draw into. Unfortunately, though, we can't really get much value off this Gadatsu because of the Luffy effect giving every character +1, so we can't Gadatsu the Zoro on the field. So instead, we can probably just throw down a Zoro. We'll pitch out the Nami because, to be quite honest, this Zoro is not too threatening either. And I'd like to have, well, maybe this Nico Robin could be good, but I think the Zoro first would be better because what we can end up doing is playing the Linlin on 9. Then we can banish whatever we throw up into life, and then we can also play a Nico Robin to follow up if that's the case. So we have a couple options here. They're just going to go and swing really heavy because, well, They don't have too many options before their Moria turn, so they're on 7. They could play the 7-cost Sanji, they could play the 5-cost Sanji, but honestly, both of those don't really do too much against us, and we're not really scared of that. So I think for them, they probably just want to pressure us down as much as possible, which if that's the case, that's fine for me, because as you saw, I got a Yamato, and Yamato here is really good because we can actually just pop the Zoro and feel pretty comfortable. Swinging 5 is always going to be countered out by the opponent for the most part. Should be an easy... Oh, it's a Gum Gum Giant. They must be extremely bricked up. If they're using a Gum Gum Giant on a 5k swing, that probably means this Zoro is going to connect. So let's go ahead and play out the Yamato, KO their Zoro, and then swing 7 and probably get a banish off. And if we, you know, didn't do that, then if we try to play like the Zoro first and swing, they took the life, then we wouldn't be able to KO that Zoro because the Yamato hits a 4-cost. But they do have a Sanji to be able to play out, although that is a counter. And so if that's the case, they probably drew that for the turn. And that's going to be very unfortunate. They couldn't play anything higher than that because they did have to use a Gum Gum Giant and go -2 for that turn. So they can't play anything big here. Easy counter out with the Gadatsu since we're not using it. And of course, if they decide to swing 5 into life, we'll just take it and see what we get. Might as well use the trigger here. And I think that they figured that it's probably, oh my God, look at their hand. It's just so bricked up. Yeah, I'm going to say that that was probably game over from the start just because of how much non-counter they had. That's actually insane. If we made it too long into the game, though, we would be in a little bit of trouble. All right, going against Purple Luffy this time, arguably the better version of Luffy that we just faced. So this is going to be much harder in my opinion because 5 life will be a little bit more difficult to get through. Of course, they ramp up just as fast as us, if not, you know, slightly faster depending on their builds. We will go ahead and use our leader ability by swinging 8, pitching out the Nami, although that could be probably useful later on because, well, they do play a lot of 4 to 5 costs. So maybe not pitching the Nami would have been fine. We should have pitched maybe like a 6-cost Nico Robin or Beige. However, I do want to play this Robin out while I have the chance and crit their life because they'll probably take their own life to go down to 2 pretty easily. We'll take the 5 easy. As I said in the intro of the video, I usually like to take life going down to 1 as much as possible, just so that I get as many cards in my hand and then see all the options I can. Here, we're just going to trash. We'll always trash first because, you know, if they decide to take our leader swing, which usually they won't, then the Nico Robin doesn't really play off of anything too well. We could alternatively play the 6-cost Zoro, but I think it's fine. And we're going to go ahead and use this trigger here just to get rid of the Zoro, even though they swung with it first. Smart on their part. We want it off the field, and we get another Nami trigger, but that doesn't really do anything. We don't care here. This Sangoro has to go. I was going to say Sangoro has to Goro, but it has to go because, honestly, this card gets them so much value over time. So we're going to go ahead and play the Linlin out and get rid of it. Healing 1 and then putting it at the top of life. Although you could argue to put it at the bottom of life so that we know what the last life is. But to be honest, I guess it doesn't really matter, especially if we're going to try to banish a lot of this stuff anyway. We're not going to argue with this Luffy Taro, and we're going to let it just go. We're going to let the Nico Robin go here. That's fine with me. We take the 7, go down to 1, and we do have the Yamato to play out, which is unfortunate that we cannot KO anything with it, but I think that's fine. We'll just threaten the 5, ask for a card out of hand, swing Linlin into the Luffy Taro, ask for another card out of hand. They're leaving 1 up, posing a Gum Gum Giant, which they don't use quite yet, which that's fine. We'll go ahead and use the Yamato, KO a Law, and then heal back up 1. We have to be careful here because they might have the 9-cost Luffy at any point in time, and they could be posing like lethal without us really understanding. This could be a lethal, by the way. They are swinging 6, and if they use their leader ability, ramp up 1, which actually, they might not be able to because I think they're at 10 anyway. That's fine. We'll go ahead and use our 0-cost event, heal back up 1. Always never punished, right? So they play out a Zoro Juro. Looks like they're just trying to go wide here, which is probably a really good option against us because we don't have a lot of KO options. Playing out the blocker is really good here too. We're going to go 5 because we're not going to put any Dawn on our leader. Once again, we're just asking for 1 card out of hand. They'll usually always give it to us. We'll go 9 into 6. They let it go. 9 into 8. They'll probably give us a 2k here. And then I would imagine with this ace, with Rush, they'll probably block with the Onami. Having 2 cards in hand, they want to keep their Luffy Taro alive. Here, I'm going to go ahead and counter out because they are at 10, so I don't know what they're going to be playing, and it could be quite scary. So I will take this one, of course, because we countered out the first one. We get a Jewelry Bonnie trigger to draw 2, trash 1, and here, if they decide to go like really heavy, if they have the 9 cost and they go 10 plus 1, we are going to lose. So we're going to go ahead and counter out of this one. They play out a Zoro Juro, just going wide yet again, and we have 1 card in hand. So we are... It's looking pretty grim right now. So once again, I'm just going to swing 5 at face, ask for 1 card out of hand, and then maybe go after bodies. Oh, that Yamato is, oh my gosh, so well timed, because now we can go for face. They'll counter out. We're going to swing at their bodies here. We'll go 9 into 6. They'll likely give us this. Okay, wow, they're going Gum Gum Giant to at least protect it, and I guess that's fine. I don't think that's a problem, but that means we can probably just safely get rid of these bodies, heal up with the Yamato, go up to 2, and now we have a bunch of bodies here on the board, and they don't have any board presence. We've been able to answer their stuff pretty effectively. Like I said, you kind of want to go and ask for a card every turn with your leader swing, and then go after the bodies on the board. Hand size are dwindling down so fast that even purple Luffy can't keep up. All right, black, yellow, Luffy. We're just facing all of the Luffys tonight. So this hand is not playable. We want to see some top end against Luffy. And so I guess this ace is fine because ace can help sustain myself and then also pressure them just naturally because they're going to be a 9K leader at some point in the game. And how soon that will be just depends on, I guess, how many life takers they see. They already start off with a Makino and to a Flampe. That's pretty rough for us. So I think at this point, to be quite honest, as Nico Robin, I don't mind just like swinging into Luffy. It might not be the best option here, but I think it's going to be okay because what we can do is swing 9 here, use our leader ability, probably pitch out a Nico Olvia. You could pitch out any of the 2Ks to be quite honest, and it's fine. They'll crit 1. Oh, love to see Moria be the one that was in the life there. We ramp up to 6, which is not really, we don't have a 6 cost, that's fine. They do play a Kuzan, draw 1. We'll take this 6K hit. We have a couple of aces ready to go, so I'm feeling pretty comfortable here. What we can do is we can swing 7 at lead. They'll likely take this one, go down to 0, then they can start using their leader ability. We're going to go ahead and pitch because that means the next turn we can actually play the ace down because we're at 8 Dawn right now. Play out the Nami to get rid of the Kuzan. The Nami's probably never going to swing into this Luffy ever again, or ever. And same thing with my leader. It's probably never swinging into the Luffy. And now we kind of just play for late. Here they have to start using their leader ability, which means they're going to go down in card size at least 1 to 2, well, at least 1, but maybe 2 to 3 cards a turn. And then, of course, we have an ace to follow up for 2 turns in a row, which is very powerful, to be quite honest. So they go Luffy into Sabo. They do play out 2 cards from hand, so they pitch 1, play 2 cards from hand. They gain 1 card back. They decide to just concede. Okay, well, let's just take a look at it and see how this would have been anyway. Seeing that they would have played out a Sabo this next turn, they probably would have swung 9 at lead. We take it, we go down to 1. We play out the ace, swing 10. They could have countered out, of course, but maybe they blocked to put the Sabo into the trash. I think we actually probably establish a pretty decent board state after this next turn and maybe pressure the black-yellow Luffy. I think this would have been fine. All right, going against Shanks, this is going to be a very hard matchup for us because, well, we can't just swing with our leader naturally because they can always just use their leader ability to counter us. So we always have to stack some Dawn on to our leader in order to make sure that we connect. And to be quite honest, once you start getting into the game around 6 to anywhere more than that Dawn, it's going to be very difficult. So we're going to swing 8 here, use our leader ability, pitch the 0 cost. I'm playing a dangerous game here because I don't have a lot of counter and I have some bricks in hand, but it'll be okay. They do take this one, of course. Usually it's harder for them to swing out of or counter out of an 8 so early, especially if it's banished, and then I can just continue to punish them by swinging at them. Play Lucky Roo, which is smart because they have a blocker now to at least prevent any kind of big attacks from my leader. They'll probably just, use leader ability here because I'm swinging 5 to 5. We'll pitch out a 2K to against Better Judgment here. Because we have a Robin, we can pitch, we can use to at least crit their life. And now, if you can see, we have 1K encounter in hand. Pretty insane. The problem here, though, and one of the reasons why I swung Robin first is because Lucky Roo can actually KO this 6-cost Robin because it KOs a 6,000 power body or less. So what we will need to do this next turn is actually play out the 9-cost Linlin to put the Lucky Roo into life so that we don't have to worry about them KOing our unit, and instead they have to swing into it rather, which is good for us. They decided to just swing a big 11 because sometimes 6 Dawn is a little awkward for Shanks if they're not seeing their curve. Of course, the Yasop was in the top life, so that would have been something they could have gotten against any other leader and then be able to play that down this turn, but I guess that was a good punish on our end. They use their leader ability on us, and then we swing 6, they counter out. That's pretty standard for Shanks. They want to stay as healthy as possible, getting to 10. Of course, we have to be aware that they're going to be at 10 very soon. After this turn, they should at least start dropping 10-cost Shanks if they have them. Of course, the other thing here is that Shanks has issues with the amount of consistency that it sees. So that is a problem, of course. They play a Rayleigh, which is great for them on curve. We'll take this 5 and then go down to 2. Here, I'm just going to swing 5. I'm going to leave my Linlin standing. I don't think it's worth swinging 7 here and leaving it exposed to a potential 10-cost Shanks. We'll go ahead and play out the ace, heal up to go to 3. And then this following turn, if they decide to swing Shanks, lead, and then go like 8 with Rayleigh, and then maybe play a 10-cost, we have to counter out at least one of these attacks because I don't want to go down to 0. Even though I can heal, I don't want to go down to 0 with as many bodies as they have. So we'll have to counter out of their leader attack at least with the 6-cost. Wow, they don't have the 10-cost here. And this is what I'm talking about. When you are playing Shanks, sometimes it's just, you don't see what you need. It's always a pain because like you might want to be able to play the 10-cost on curve. And if they have the 10-cost here, it does a lot of damage and it could potentially swing things back into their favor. Because I think right now we're pretty favored because of the bodies we have on board. They did establish 2 blockers, which is very nice here. Maybe they should, okay, I was going to say, maybe they should have put the blockers out afterwards because they're going to get punished with this Nami being able to get rid of the Lucky Roo. Pretty nice on our part. I don't mind. Oh, nice. We get a Nico Olvia trigger to draw 2 trash 1, or draw 3 trash 2 rather. So we get rid of the 6-cost Zoros because I think we can keep a 2K and a 1K, and we want to keep these big bodies here to keep sustaining ourselves. The reason I got rid of Lucky Roo is because it doesn't really matter, to be honest. We can get rid of the Lucky Roo. We can get rid of the Silver's Rayleigh with the KO trigger. Either way, we're playing out a Yamato this turn and KOing the other blocker that we didn't KO with the Nami trigger. So we'll swing 5. Once again, leader ability will be used. We're leaving 1 up because we have the Gum Gum Giant. And we're going to now pressure the body because they're at 4 life. We don't want to give them too many cards in hand, too many opportunities to potentially get into the 10-cost Shanks. So we'll go 9 into 8. They give us a 2K, and then we'll go 10 into 8. They should give us 2 cards here. I would be surprised if they let it go, but also maybe they just don't have the counter. Sometimes Shanks doesn't have the counter, and this seems like this Shanks doesn't have the 10-cost, doesn't have the counter. It seems very good for us, very favorable. Usually it's a rough matchup here, but we've definitely kept it even and started to pull ahead, I think, at this point in the game. Now, if they drop a 10 drop here, of course, we are going to protect one of these units because we do have the Gum Gum Giant, and that is at least a safety measure for us here. If they decide to go face, then I will gladly take that as well. I don't mind doing that. We do need to start pressuring their life because they are at 4. They are at a healthy life total, and the longer that we prolong this game, the worse it is for us. Oh, okay. So they play a Yasop down. That's fine. They play Sanji. They might just be trying to go wide here because they're afraid that I'm going to start swinging in, or rather that I can just keep sustaining myself rather. I think that's probably the smart move here, especially playing a Sanji down, being able to take life here. Although they should have probably used the Sanji ability. We'll take the Uta. We'll counter out of the 6K from the Shanks. And we can play down this Yamato here. The reason why we counter out is because we want to be able to KO this Yasop with the Yamato and heal back up 1. We'll go 5 into... I was going to swing into lead, but they're at 6, so we'll go 5 into 2 to get rid of the Uta that swung. We'll go 9 into 6. They'll likely take this one. We'll go another 9 into 6. They probably will take this one, or they could just use a leader ability and go 2-1. Although, for them, I probably just like to see as many cards as possible. But if they decide to counter out of this, I wouldn't blame them either. Looks like they're going to be doing that. And then we can follow up with the ace swing to go 10 to 6, and that will put them down to 2 life. So we're at equal life totals, but our board state is very much more dominant than theirs. And they do have a Sanji, which means that if they decide to use the Sanji ability to take a life, then they'll go down to 1, and that's pretty easy lethal for us at least, or at least a really comfortable way to present lethal to them. Dragon is not awful. They decide to use their Sanji ability. They are going extremely ham here. We should be okay, though, because we do have the 1-cost Gum Gum Giant to be able to counter out of at least something here, and we have plenty of counter in hand outside of that. But maybe we have some good life triggers as well. Who knows? We don't need them, but, you know, it could always work out. And speak of the devil, we have the beige here. So we'll go ahead and just, like, stop the dragon from attacking. Arguably, you could probably just stop the leader attack and then have them swing with their dragon so that if we decided to do board cleanup, we could. However, we're going for game this next turn because I feel like at 1 life and 4 giant bodies on the board is a pretty good standing here. I'm going to swing 5 here because we do have the ace. I just want to play out this ace again because I love playing aces. Why not? We'll go 9. They take it, and of course we'll just stack on at this point because no point in BMing with all the other swings here. So they actually did have a 10 cost. It looks like on maybe curve. It's second in their hand. Surprised they didn't play it down sooner, but maybe they felt like establishing a wider board was going to be a better answer against me, which sometimes it is. When I first saw this leader announced, I thought that this leader would be the one that I'd be like maining for '09. And to be quite honest, as I've played it, I feel like there are stronger leaders that have come out of OP09. Of course, like Doflamingo is definitely the best deck in the format outside of maybe arguably like Black Yellow Luffy. Purple Luffy's also very strong. And then Shanks was a great addition to come out of OP09. Very fair deck. However, Nico Robin kind of felt like it was not given a lot of love, at least play-wise, from what I've seen. I think maybe people don't figure it's that strong, but to be honest, it plays like kind of like a Nell to me, where you take a lot of life, you go down to 1, you can heal back up, and while you're doing that, you're starving your opponent with your leader swings, and you have access to the crazy counter event Gum Gum Giant here. So honestly, I think that I'm going to be playing this deck as more of like a side deck, as a fun deck here. Not saying it's a bad deck whatsoever. I do think it has a lot of potential against some of the decks in the meta. If you play it correctly, your opponent will have to make some very tough decisions as to how to counter out and when to counter out. And there's different ways to build it as well. If you want, you can go like more of a full starve package where you have like 4 Gadatsus and you're swinging with your leader to banish stuff. And then you have the Nico Robins, you have the Zoros, and then on top of that, maybe a 7-cost Lin, which will cause even more confusion for your opponent to have to decide on what to do. The other version I'd like to build is maybe a Straw Hat Crew version, as I mentioned, where you are running like the Trafalgar Law. Maybe you build some of the purple Luffy starter deck stuff, like the Luffy Taro, the Sangoros, the 9-cost Luffy. Build more of like I said, the Straw Hat Crew. May not be the most powerful, but it will be very fun and flavorful at least. So there's plenty of ways to build this leader, but I feel like at least this build is probably one of the more competitive builds just because of the pure power that you have involved and the counter power that's also at your arsenal here. So Nico Robin for me is a clear great deck in this format. Maybe not well represented, maybe not well piloted overall, but I definitely think that the fact that this leader has Banish built into it is something that's very special and should be played more often if that's the case. Anyway, I appreciate you guys watching as usual, and I'll see you guys in the next video.